Well, evening, folks. Welcome back to the channel. Today, or this evening actually, we're going to be spraying and killing our cover crop where we're going to be planting our pumpkins. I've got the sprayer over there filled up and it's agitating right now. I did drive out here in the field a little bit, try to get away from that tractor noise. I was actually worried if the booms were going to be high enough on the sprayer to spray this. Now, that particular sprayer doesn't have adjustable booms as far as height goes, so I wanted to make a pass out here and see if it would work. And there's a couple places in here that it's not ideal, but it'll be okay. And for our burn down, I'm just using straight Roundup. I thought about using Gramoxone, but really, I don't see any weeds out here in the field. It's really clean, to be honest with you. So if you've been following the channel for a while and you tuned in last year, I think one of the last videos we did last year because we got busy was talking about why we weren't using cover crop for our pumpkins. And now I'm standing here in the field and we've got cover crop and we're going to be planting our pumpkins into this cover crop. The only thing I didn't really like about it last year, not having a cover crop, is we had to wash a lot of pumpkins. Just about every pumpkin we handled, we at least had to brush off. Like we got some brushes like you use to brush off your dishes and stuff like that, or scrub the floor with, and we just carried one of them in our pockets, and anytime there was mud on a pumpkin, we try to scrape it off. And it's not ideal. It kills productivity, and even at best, you know, the pumpkins were much cleaner when we used a cover crop. So with that being said, we are doing some things a little bit differently this year as opposed to what we've done in the past with the cover crops. Right now, the cover crop is about waist high. So in previous years when we've used a cover crop, we've let it get taller, and we didn't terminate it until like pretty close to when we were getting ready to plant our pumpkins. It's still the end of May right now, so we're probably about 3 weeks out before we plant pumpkins. So by spraying this Roundup and stuff and terminating this cover crop now, it's going to give it plenty of time to die down and completely dry up, and that's what we want, because that allows the planter to plant a lot better. Once this is dead, we will come through here and plant, and then we'll either roll this cover crop down after we plant, or we'll bush hog it, one of the two. We've done both in the past. Way back when, 2 or 3 years ago, I don't even know if I was doing videos again, probably 4 years ago, we had a field that was down that way, and actually I think that was one of the first videos that I ever did. We used to have sweet corn down there, but in that field we did a side-by-side comparison where we rolled half the field and we bush hogged the other half, and we really didn't see any difference. Then we will come back and spray our pre-emergent herbicide directly after we plant our pumpkins, and we may even throw some more Roundup in there if there's any other kind of weeds in here that, you know, that's coming up between now and then. But one of the reasons we're spraying our pre-emergent herbicide directly after we plant as opposed to before we plant, that was another problem we were having in years past, was that right where the planter units traveled, we would get pigweed and we would get water hemp grow up right in those strips, and those are a weed that's hard to combat. The pre-emergent herbicides that we use protect against those, but I think the planter may have incorporated it too deeply. I'm not sure why it was doing that, so just to alleviate that, we're going to spray our pre-emergent on directly after we plant our pumpkins, if that makes sense. One thing I will say about this wheat, it has headed out, but the seeds haven't matured in it, so that's a good thing. Another thing that we noticed when we used cover crop before, if you let the seed mature and get almost ripe, after you roll it or bush hog it or whatever, and you get a few rains, then you're going to start seeing wheat come back up in the field, because wheat doesn't take much. You can almost throw it on the ground and it'll grow. Now there is some herbicides, post-emergent herbicides that we can use for grasses that we sprayed on pumpkins before. But you know, hopefully by terminating this cover crop now, we can kind of go ahead and hopefully not have to do that after the fact. We usually use our Highboy sprayer or self-propelled sprayer. It's just not quite ready yet. We've got to do some work on it. Like everything else around here, you know, we just run it till it breaks and then we try to fix it. It'd be nice if we had like $1 million in the bank and we could just fix stuff or do a lot of preventive maintenance, but we run on a pretty tight budget, and repairs, you know, even for our small operation, we budget about $5 grand a year for repairs, and it you know, that goes like that. So we try to push off any big repairs to the end of the year if we're getting close to that budget, you know, so we don't go over. And then if there's something that major that needs to be done, we can hopefully try to address it at the end of the year. But we've already got several big projects going on. Again, if you've been following along, you see the 6410, we've got the axle out from underneath of it because the bushings are wore out and the steering cylinder went kaput. So, but you'll have that on a farm. Stuff breaks down, and again, like I said, I wish, you know, if I had a bunch of money all the time, I'd, you know, fix it all, do a lot more probably preventive maintenance than I do, but try to stretch it all as far as we can. And sometimes that ends up biting you, I know, but we do the best we can with what we got. To hear, but what I normally like to do, I'll start on this far side of the field and I'll go around the outside, and then I'll start where the long rows are, and those rows are straight, and then I can finish the field. And then when I get to the point rows, if I overlap very much, it won't be that much. Of course, we're just spraying Roundup, so if we overlap a little bit, it's not going to hurt anything. We are trying to, after all, we are trying to terminate and kill this cover crop. It's a little tall right here. That's definitely not ideal. The one thing about Roundup, as long as it gets on there, as long as it touches the plant will absorb it and it will terminate the plant. We are putting on like 25 gallons of water per acre and 1.5 quarts of Roundup per acre. So we should have plenty of water and plenty of chemical in there to make sure that we get that we terminate it. Worked up pretty good. Ran about right when it was supposed to, and now for one of my least favorite tasks is cleaning out the sprayer. Well, got the ammonia rinsing through there right now. I'm standing back here because it's kind of a strong smell. All right, we are done for the day. It's about 7:30 now, but we got everything sprayed over here that we needed to, got the ground worked. So I'm gonna hook up to the corn planter and take it back home, and then tomorrow at some point we'll start jockeying all this stuff back over to Indiana. I know I've got some things to do in the morning, so it might be late tomorrow evening before I get it done, but weather forecast is calling for like 2 weeks of good weather, so dry weather. So we're not in a hurry right now to get anything else planted. We do need to get our eggplants and watermelon planted, and I think it's dry enough over home to do that. But that's one thing that I'm going to go do in the morning, to see if I can find some eggplant, because that's the only thing that And I mean, they just didn't germinate this year for whatever reason, just like our peppers didn't. So I did find some pepper plants and we planted those, but I've not been able to track down any eggplant. So I don't know if it was a problem for everybody or they just, everybody just seeded them later. I'm not sure, so. But we'll see you in the morning. Good morning, folks. Back over here at the farm now. I came over to get the sprayer. I got to get it folded up because it's still, I just kind of left it there last night when I got done spraying. But we got to fold it up and so we can take it back over at home. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on, because I don't know if I really talked about this yesterday. When we were applying the burn down on our cover crop to kill it, we just used straight Roundup and nothing else. Now, you can do that, but I would caution you need to know what type of weeds are in your field before you just do something like that. I walked out and scouted the field kind of before we were kind of picked what herbicide that we wanted to use to terminate the cover crop, and I really didn't see anything other than just wheat and a few broadleaf weeds that Roundup actually will take care of. Now, if you've got some weeds in your field that Roundup will not kill, which there are a lot of weeds out there now that Roundup will not kill. If you've got pigweed, if you've got mare's tail, if you've got water hemp, you know, those are just probably the main three, but I'm sure there's getting to be some more out there that Roundup is getting resistant to. So if you've got any of those weeds in your field, you're probably going to have to go a different route, or at least add another herbicide in with the Roundup. So there are some other chemicals that are fairly cheap, such as like 2,4-D. You could mix that in there. That'll usually go ahead and kill things like mare's tail as long as it's not too big. You're still going to have a problem though with pigweed, or not pigweed, but water hemp. If you have water hemp in your field, 2,4-D will it'll knock pigweed pretty well as long as it's not too big as well. Some other options that you may have is things like Gramoxone. Gramoxone will pretty much it'll kill anything. I actually picked some up because I didn't know what we'd be dealing with out here. I just didn't want to waste the chemical if we didn't need to use it. If you've never seen mare's tail, this is what mare's tail looks like. I didn't see any out there in the field, but there's a few plants out here on the edge. But Roundup will not kill that weed. So if you do have those types of weeds in your field, make sure you're using a pre-emergent herbicide that will take care of them. You know, again, I know those weeds are out in the field because we've had a problem with them in the past. We didn't have that much of a problem with them last year because we tilled this field and then planted our pumpkins and then sprayed our pre-emergent herbicide down. So we really didn't have that big of a problem in this field. Now, we did have a pumpkin field, a couple acres up on the front field that we're not actually farming this year, just because we're rotating it out. But we did have a really bad pigweed problem in that field, and we had to go through and hoe, and and it took quite a while to go through there and clean that field by using a garden hoe. So again, you know, it's just good to know, familiarize yourself with what types of weeds in your field so you're selecting the right pre-emergent herbicide to use when you're planting pumpkins, as well as a timely application of your pre-emergent herbicide. So I suggest that you spray it directly after you plant, but right before a rain, because a lot of those pre-emergent herbicides, especially for your cucurbit crops such as pumpkin, squash, and all that, we use Strategy and Dual mixed together, and it needs at least a ½ inch of rain to activate. And you have to have that ½ inch of rain within, I think it's a week. So if you're planting your pumpkins and there's no rain in sight for 2 weeks and you're putting your pre-emergent herbicide down, you're just wasting money because it will not activate, it will not work, and so just keep that in mind. I'm not sure if there's anything else I'm forgetting when it comes to herbicides and pumpkins. Again, there's not really anything that you can spray. There's not too many things that you can spray over top of pumpkins. I know you can spray Sandia, and Sandia works pretty good on mare's tail and stuff if it's not too big. Some other hard to kill broadleaves, but you definitely don't want to spray Sandia if your pumpkins or your other cucurbits are getting ready to flower. It will actually make them drop their flower, and you know, you don't want that, because you want your pumpkins to produce as soon as possible. And in the past, we've used that a couple times, and it just seems to me, and any of you other growers out there that use Sandia, if you're watching this video, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It seems that it slows the plant down and it takes it longer to mature and produce fruit. It'll put it about 2 weeks behind in my experience. So, but some other people, they may use it and it's fine. For grasses, I think I did touch on this yesterday, but you know, if you're rolling this wheat down or bush hogging it or whatever after you plant into it, there could be a chance that, you know, those seeds are going to work their way in the ground after it rains for a while, and then you're going to have wheat pop back up in the field. If we have that happen, there's a herbicide that we use called Intensity that we can spray over top of the pumpkins, and it doesn't hurt them, and it will kill the grass. But I think that I've terminated this soon enough that we're not going to have that problem. I mean, yesterday you might have saw that when I was out there looking at the seed and stuff, I kind of tried to break one open, and none of the seeds are mature yet. And that's one of the reasons I kind of wanted to terminate the cover crop now, is because of that. And I don't want it to get too tall where we're going to be having problems planting into it and that kind of thing. So anyway, hello, get away, deer fly. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get this sprayer unhooked from the tractor so we can get it hooked to the truck and head back. Yeah, Indiana's actually that way, so we'll head back that way.